free mother.
Hello,
Good morning, Sparkles.
Sparkle Girls.
Can you hear the sound?
Yes, we can hear our beautiful music. It's cutting in and out a little bit, but that's okay.
Hey, Sparkles. I'm Gwendolyn.
I'm Jeannie.
I'm Giovanna.
Welcome, Sparkles. All of our
Yay.
magical sparkles.
Let's take a
Yay.
moment and zoom in. I'm so excited about this topic. Wild and free mamas.
Ooh.
Feel the
Mm.
freedom. Feel how there's no end to where your energy stops. It doesn't stop. It just goes and goes and it melds and blends with everything and all of the beautiful landscapes and clouds and sunsets and oceans and rivers and lakes and people and plants. All of it is you and this planet and beyond. And it's all held in love. There's nothing that's not held in love. Nothing that we are not holding in love. So just, mm.
Mm.
Yay.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
So, Giovanna, I heard that you were a pretty wild mama.
Well, I think that runs with the three of us probably connect. There's a part of us like from our past. I feel like from what we know now, like being awakened and knowing who we are and just and I look back and it's like the more I just become who I meant to become, the perfection of who we are and blah blah blah. I look back at all my life and I was just like, how I've been supported this whole time, like how unique each one of us are. And so instead of looking at all the past as going like all the troubles or things that happened, and you're like, wow, like it was all really adventure. Like I really knew my shit. Like, being a single mom or losing my mom or, feeling like I had this light within me since, my mom died. I was like,
And
okay,
how old were you when that happened?
when I was 16. So it's like, feels like the your end of your world. All of a sudden, your mother, like something, it's like I jumped a cliff. And it was like, from then on, it was like looking for that home feeling, that unconditional love. Like I say now, it's my yellow brick road. And when you look back, it's like, even like as soon as she passed, it was almost like I could just still feel her, or I just had this knowing that she was still around me. Like how I think back, I think that now because I didn't think I was a medium until after I healed myself of the cancer and all that. But what I must have been a medium all my life because feeling that my mother was still near me, like even though I didn't have her human body here, and then that feeling of having someone protect you, and that part felt like the rug was pulled underneath me. But I still, and then throughout life, it was like no matter what, it was almost like whatever happened in life, it was like whether it was, stuff happening with my daughter or my brothers or anything, it was just like I always had that light, or I just, and then I had my grandparents pass, and my dad pass, and there was a lot of people that passed in my life, and it was like, but I still had the strength to keep going on my own. Like being the single mom, I enjoyed it. I think back and I felt
And
powerful
not just
because
and not just enjoyed, you celebrated it. Tell us about the Mermaid House. I mean, my
oh,
gosh,
just
this is
just my daughter, like I was so blessed with a daughter, and she had this imagination, and she was so in love with all the fairy tales and the princesses. So especially Ariel was her favorite, and so I just allowed to have mermaids in the house or the bathroom, and even when friends would come over and stuff, would be like, "Your house is like you allowed her to have this stuff all around you," and I was like, well, why not? Doesn't it make you feel good to have your fairy tales or just like that innocent excitement, like believing in Santa? Like it's like that magic. I always had it within me, even though you don't not necessarily share it, but I had someone to share it with, like the daughter. It was like she was my excuse to be following my joy. So every morning would be like a good morning, like no matter how the night was, it'd be like good morning. No matter like, I did have anxiety and stuff like that, or I had that survivor mode and like we all did, like, well, I did anyways. And so I always made sure I had like money in the bank. I was a server, like to think back, I was a server. I had a lot of money because I was a server. I mean, I didn't do the 9 to 5 job like everybody else. And so instead of, I guess I think now how I had the power back then. But then we all sometimes would listen to the outside world and it has to be this way.
Yeah, but
So,
not you. You were the fairy godmother mother. You
yeah.
were, it was like you were wild, but you were also innocent and you allowed yourself, to be the attractor, like how the other children loved you.
Yes, like I feel, I like think back now, like I was at safe, all the kids wanted to come over, or they really enjoyed Marissa. And even though sometimes some of them, would make fun of her and whatever, and because other kids, you can't look like that. You get to a certain age, even in Marissa's school in grade 3 and grade 4, like teachers I feel like would always have it out for her and send people to my house, like your daughter needs this and that, like psychologist. And I was like, but then when I went to the psychologist, the lady was like, okay, just let your daughter just draw there for a minute and I'll talk to you. And within a few minutes, she drew every single princess, handed it to the lady, and the lady was like, wow, your daughter is really good at that, So no matter the school it's like they try to make it wrong for her to be, though they still send those things home going, every child is unique. But it was like, okay, but she was really unique. She loved her imagination. And I just was the mother that was like, yeah, with the kids, they would come in
Yeah,
and they'd share.
yeah,
And yeah,
yeah.
that's the belief, right? Like you could be
Yeah.
a parent and say,
So
yeah,
I did that with my son. I only had him until he was 5, but I made my job every day to somehow blow his mind. Somehow, I mean, we would always go to the playground and I would always be on the equipment with him. I
yeah.
wouldn't just sit and watch. But also, like we had this imaginary hole in the wall and you could pull anything out of it.
Oh my
And
goodness.
so maybe it's a pancake, maybe it's
Your
a
portal. That's your portal.
maybe it's puppies, We were like he
Oh
thought
my
it was so
God.
funny that we were eating puppies. And then I let him change his name every day. So sometimes he was named House or something, like whatever he wanted to be called, that was his name that day, you
Yes.
know?
I feel like, wow, that's awesome, Gwendolyn. That's why I feel like we've met together on this podcast because we all have this unique, like, we had this imagination. Like Jeannie, you talked about how your dolls and dancing and playing with your dolls, right? Didn't your story about your doll? I remember.
Well, when I was and this is what it reminds me, and what I said to you before we started taping was, as you were speaking about this, it reminds me of how, as little girls or boys, because I played, I was playing with I have a brother and everything, so he would play house in his way, and I would play it in my way, and my way, it wasn't just like babies that look like children, right? It was stuffed animals, it was a rock, it was like all these characters, but they were my kids, right? Like this menagerie of kids. And when, as you're speaking about Marissa, your daughter, and Gwendolyn, your son, you retained that imaginative play, and you're like, you know what, this is my reality, this is my motherhood, that I am the lead character in this, and I can retain that imaginative quality and that playfulness of, I mean, when you're a kid, it's just a total play and imagination, and you're doing these incredibly joyous things, right? And you both of you kept that within the raising of kids, and I think that's wonderful. And that's what we're doing here, right? Is we're now as
I don't,
adults, it's like finding that again, but you were
yes.
keeping that in your life.
I
Yeah.
don't
And I
we
think it's
lost it.
wonderful.
I think now
No, exactly.
didn't matter what we went, like, like Gwen in the past, all the different things that we chose. Like, I would think, okay, maybe I didn't choose that right path or whatever, but it was the right path because I was like, I felt like it kept me in my innocence regardless. Like, the outside world could show me this, but I had that inner version of me, and so it didn't
Yeah.
matter. Or
Yeah.
my mother or
Yeah.
Jesus or whoever was around
Yeah.
me, the spiritual world, the angels. Like, I always felt,
It's your freedom, really.
yeah,
It's your freedom.
yeah,
That's what it
Well,
really is your
and when
freedom.
you think about it, small children live from within themselves in and create the imaginary world around them. And then the old story, I'm going to call it the old story because it's not the new world story, right? The old story was, okay, now you need to stop doing that and you need to get real, right? And it's like, no, that is, now we know, now that we're aware and awake of what's going on in each of our realities, oh my gosh, we need to live from the inside so that we create that new world, that new reality that we most
yes,
desire to live,
yes,
instead of just the same old life over and over and over. And sometimes it even gets worse because you're fighting so hard against
Well, and
things.
the same
yes,
thing with kids. It's like my son didn't have to be told, "Oh, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do stop that." Da da da. I mean, yeah, there was a little bit of discipline, but that wasn't the thing. You know,
Yeah.
that like that part of buying into the paradigm is that you're supposed to only boss the kid around and to limit them.
yes,
It was
yes,
like the opposite. It's like, no, because really all I knew when I was raising him is that I had to do the opposite of whatever was done to me. That's all
yes,
I knew. And so,
yeah,
they were always trying to knock me down and tell me how horrible I was. So I was just always like, look at this, look at you. Can you believe you did that? Whether he was like he would create Lego starships that were just amazing.
Yeah.
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 It's retaining that innocence and that love and the joy and that fulfillment. Everything that is what we are created of, right? And then we layer it with all these
I
limitations and expectations, but it's just retaining that fulfillment.
I feel like with the losing my mother, yes, it brought me to, it almost brought me in that vulnerable place of, but it kept my heart like open. Like, even though some parts was closed, it's still like my heart was open for my daughter, or animals or other
Yeah.
Yeah.
children or that
Well,
innocence.
and didn't it also bring you within?
Yes,
Didn't you
yes,
go within because you knew
Yeah.
that a reality existed with her within there,
yeah,
right? And that you could feel the love, like if you just sat and
Mm.
felt,
Yeah,
you
because
could
that's where you
feel
would
the
connect with
hug.
her, right?
Yeah, you could feel that.
Yeah.
and then also too with the, like, for me with the birds up until now, it's like every morning those birds chirped. It was so for me that was like that reminder each morning that, like, even if within me I was feeling like not the best or had worries and doubts and all these things, that birds would just remind me every morning, like,
Aw.
how could be anything be like, I was in the muck, but how can there be other thing but beautiful birds singing, right? Like, it felt like there was, no matter how much of a muck that you go through, it was like the birds sing, the sun rises, right?
That's so
Love that.
beautiful. Oh, I love that you were innocent and kept your wildness.
You shine so bright, you sparkle, you are the light. You
Aw.
shine so bright, you sparkle, 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 sparkle. 'Cause you shine so bright, you sparkle, you sparkle, 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 sparkle. 'Cause you shine so bright, you sparkle, 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 sparkle. 'Cause you shine so bright, you sparkle, 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 sparkle.
Aw.
Love you.
Mwah. Wild and sweet mamas.